Well, illegal immigration is a problem around the world, according to some people. Other people would have you believe that there is no such thing as illegal immigration and no one is illegal. And most of us, well, we don't really know what to believe, and everywhere in the world is different and what's happening is different. But certainly nowhere in the world are we seeing immigration at the rates that we're seeing on the southern border of the United States. Joining me now to discuss this problem and some really interesting details within this particular challenge is our North America correspondent, Julie Hartman. Julie, thank you so much for joining us once again on the Aussie Wire.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Julie, this challenge of the southern border of the United States, this is not a new thing. This has been a political football for decades. Trump promised to build the wall, said he was going to make Mexico pay for it. Parts of the wall have been built, but there are still massive gaps in there. And certainly since Joe Biden came to power, we've seen incredible numbers of people crossing that border. What's the situation right now? Is that ongoing? Are they taking steps to try and reduce those numbers? What's the situation right now?
Well, we really don't know the situation. It seems to kind of flip-flop almost on a weekly basis. When President Trump was then candidate Trump running for office in 2015, when he announced the whole plan for a border wall and that Mexico would pay for it, everyone in this country on the left freaked out, thought he was insane. And now what we are seeing is that so many immigrants, illegal immigrants, have crossed into our border that now those very same individuals who reacted so strongly back in 2015 are now some of the strongest proponents of actually building that border wall. So what has happened is that since President Biden took office 3 years ago in January of 2021, over 7 million undocumented immigrants have come across our southern border alone. 7 million. In fact, some people are estimating that it may be higher. It may be close to 10 million. But that 7 million number that I provided to you is not just a rumor that I heard. It's actually the data from the Department of Homeland Security. So that is government data.
Wow.
And so I think a lot of Americans are going, my gosh, who are these people coming across our border? Of course, many are seeking a better life. I have enormous sympathy for them, but could there perhaps be bad actors? And also, do we have the money and resources and infrastructure to support this influx?
Look, this is an issue that I feel very conflicted on. I'm a libertarian, and so I believe that the movement of human beings and human capital, if I can put it in economic terms, is just as important as the movement of goods to creating prosperity. But I do believe that incentives matter. What are the incentives right now in the US? I would argue, for example, that if there wasn't a welfare state, that you would be more likely to get people coming for the purpose of working hard and contributing, as opposed to if you have a big welfare state like what we do in Australia, a percentage of people will come to try and mooch off the taxpayer and mooch off the state. What are the incentives at play in America? Do people get an enormous amount of government support once they arrive?
Well, it certainly seems so. In New York City, we have seen that thousands of migrants which came to Manhattan actually got free stays, government subsidized stays in hotel rooms all around Manhattan. They got free meals, they got free clothing. In fact, the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, actually made an announcement urging churches and mosques and synagogues to provide room to house these migrants. And so I think there's a huge incentive, to your point, certainly the welfare state, but also the kind of extension of that, where we have many Democrat politicians saying that their cities are, quote, sanctuary cities, where no person is illegal. Every individual is welcome. And what we have seen happen is that many of those leaders of those quote unquote sanctuary cities, such as the aforementioned mayor of Manhattan, Eric Adams, have actually gone back and said, wait a minute, we are getting way too many people and our city cannot support this anymore. In fact, Mayor Adams said that illegal immigration was, quote, destroying the city. Talk about a 180. So I think people are realizing this incentive structure and trying now, it may be too late, to dismantle it.
It is quite remarkable to hear people like the mayor of New York saying the very same things that people in southern Texas and the southern parts, the border areas of the US have been saying for quite some time. You brought to my attention an article that I want to bring up on screen here now because this really gives some texture, some context. It's actually a remarkably good article from CNN of all places, but credit to the author of this article. I've read the whole thing. We'll make sure we put the link into the description of this video because I think it's well worth everyone's time going and reading this. Talk to us a little bit about this particular detail, that they're noticing a significant rise specifically in Chinese nationals coming across the southern border. Why is that?
Well, what we are seeing here through this article, and by the way, there have been many other newspapers, not just CNN or news publications, which have reported on this. What we're seeing is that there is a large influx of migrants, specifically from China. This article says that in the first, and again, I'm quoting from CNN, in the first 11 months of 2023, more than 31,000 Chinese citizens were picked up by law enforcement crossing illegally into the United States from Mexico. That number, 31,000 in the first 11 months of 2023, is more Chinese nationals coming into our border than the past 10 years combined. So this is really the concern of American citizens. There has been a very successful campaign launched by the left, which vilifies people who are anti-illegal immigration. They call us xenophobes. They call us bigots. They say that we are callous people who have no sympathy for the plight of others. That is totally untrue. I, as a conservative who loves the United States of America, understands better than anyone else why someone from a poverty-stricken, war-torn country would want to flee that situation and come to America to create a better life for themselves and their families. I totally get it. I would illegally cross the border if I were in such a position. But what we are seeing is that there's reason to believe that there are bad actors coming across our border. Are all of those 31,000 Chinese citizens bad actors? Of course not. But we have seen that China, as our number one adversary, has been very deft at trying to spy on us, establishing a spy base on Cuba, sending a spy balloon over the United States, bribing the Biden family to buy them off. And let me ask you this question. Do you think that they would shy away from this opportunity, knowing that our southern border is wide open, to send in spies? Of course they wouldn't. So this is the concern of the American people.
No, I tend to agree, but I would push back and wonder whether China as a nation state has the resources. They could just fly them in and have them skip their visa. It also strikes me, we saw with Cuba, we saw that Fidel Castro gladly allowed a number of Cubans out of Cuba to flee mostly to the US in order to reduce opposition to himself and in order to shore up his own grip on power within Cuba. And I have to wonder, to what degree would Xi Jinping perhaps be quite happy for those that are unhappy in China? Christians, for example, or people who aren't members of the party or are speaking out and want to have some political freedom. He might be quite happy to have them leave and go over the southern border of the United States, and he would just say, good riddance. It's not necessarily a given that this is being used as some sort of a military exercise on the part of the Chinese government.
It's certainly not a given, but I think what we also see, Topher, is that Xi Jinping is not the type to necessarily say, okay, to his enemies, why don't you leave China if you don't like it? We see his relentless persecution of Falun Gong members, which is that religious sect which the CCP has outlawed. They kill and actually harvest the organs of members of that group. We also see the massive, despicable Uyghur massacre of the Turkish Muslim minority in China. They're put in concentration camps, killed, and also their organs are harvested. So I think that, again, Xi Jinping, is not exactly the type of guy to want to force out his enemies. He wants to relentlessly persecute them. But again, I hear your point. Not all of these individuals are bad actors. Again, I get more than anyone why people would want to come to the United States of America. But we are seeing time and time again that China is aggressive and relentless with their infiltration and spying campaign here in the United States. And I think there is great reason to believe that they would take advantage of this wide open opportunity to send in spies and bad actors into their adversary, our country.
It's certainly a possibility. I certainly can't say that it's not happening. That is for sure. Look, it's a difficult issue for me, and one that I just wish we could grab our politicians by the scruff of the neck and get them to fix the incentives so that we wouldn't have to control people in the way that a closed border controls in one way, an open border causes harms in another way. And if we could just fix the incentives, then I think a lot of these problems would fix themselves. But sadly, Julie, you don't run America, I don't run Australia, and we can't fix these problems by talking about them. But we do appreciate you bringing this to our attention. We'll put the link to that CNN article into the description of this video so that you can read that for yourself and understand a little bit more about what's happening there. And Julie Hartman, North America Correspondent, thank you once again for coming on the Aussie Wire.
Thank you so much.